Hi everyone, welcome to tonight's class. Tonight we're going to be doing oven roasted chicken and vegetables. Thank you so much for coming, and we're going to get started right now. Let's dive into it. So before we actually start the recipe, there'll be a little bit of information, some slides, and then we'll actually start the cooking. But this is a good time to relax and get all your ingredients together, get your space organized if you're going to be cooking along. I also want to quickly promote that next month, February 18th, our next class will be an enchilada casserole. We are going to do it vegetarian, although it's easy enough to add meat if you want to. And basically, enchilada is traditionally a rice and bean mixture, sometimes with other vegetables or meat, and it's rolled up in corn tortillas, and then it's kind of drizzled with a sauce and baked. And so this is very similar, but we're actually doing an even easier version where instead of rolling up all of the ingredients in the corn tortillas, we're going to be doing it more like a Mexican lasagna style. So it's a great one-pan meal. Come along if you can next month on February 18th. We also do a little Zoom basics at the beginning of each class. So this class is being recorded. If you want to turn off your video, you can right here. It's very unlikely that you will appear in the YouTube for more than just a moment. You can also unmute yourself here. We may have a chance for people to do that and ask questions. For the most part, everyone is going to enter the room automatically muted, and we ask people to stay muted and use the chat box to ask questions. So chat box is right here. You can pull up the chat box. So for tonight's meal that we're cooking, relatively simple ingredient-wise, we have 1/4 cup of olive oil, 2 tablespoons of seasoning blend. This can be any dry seasoning blend that is salt-free, and 1 teaspoon of low sodium soy sauce. Then we have 4 chicken breasts. Chicken breasts can vary a lot in size. The ones that I use for this recipe are actually much larger and ended up being more than 1.75 pounds. But the recipe is recommending at its basic to use 4 chicken breasts, roughly 2 pounds, a little under 2 pounds. You can use bigger ones if you want, like I did in this recording, and you'll just have to adjust the cooking time a little bit. And we're going to go into all of that once we get started. 3 sweet potatoes and 1 lemon. And we like to include the nutrition panel when available. This recipe did have a nutritional panel available, so we're looking, we just do some highlights here. There is a little bit of fat in the meal. It's a totally healthy amount. There's also a lot of protein, 43 grams per quarter of this recipe. So some sweet potatoes and some chicken. And without further ado, let's dive into it. So before we jump into actually cooking and the video of prepping and cooking everything, I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of the ingredients. So we have chicken, first of all, of course. Chicken breasts can be very thin, like these ones over here in the photo, or they can be pretty thick, meaning that 4 chicken breasts could weigh less than 2 pounds, or it could weigh almost 4 pounds. So you can choose whatever you prefer. Just be aware that you might have to vary your cooking time. Spice blends. So the spice blend that I'm going to be using tonight is a poultry seasoning blend that has, let's see, it has thyme, sage, marjoram, rosemary, black pepper, and nutmeg in it. And this is just a pre-mixed poultry seasoning blend, but really you could use any spice blend or even a single spice that you or your family enjoys. Or if you wanted to have other sides along with this dinner or lunch or meal, etc., you could also consider a spice that would tie the meal together culturally. So for example, a more Asian take on this meal could use garlic, ginger, and toasted sesame oil in place of the olive oil. Side of green beans or bok choy or cabbage saute would go great with that. Or serving the chicken sliced over noodles would change the feeling of the dish. So simple changes that could that you can use this same technique is what I'm trying to say to cook chicken and vegetables in many different ways. And on that note, I was trying to give a few thoughts of variations on the recipe. You can try a different spice blend, curry, sage. You could try baking a different vegetable like potatoes or squash, or you could try different ways of cutting up your vegetables. Long sticks make great simple oven fries. So it's kind of a quick and easy way to make something very much like French fries. Let's see, Marcia, are there any questions yet? I don't know if people are putting questions in the chat box or not, but I thought I would just pause and ask if there's any questions.
I really love those alternatives, those options that you gave for seasonings. At this time, there are no questions.
Okay, that's great. Cool. Well, just a reminder, if people do have questions and they want to put them in the chat box as we go, I'll kind of pause every once in a while and answer questions. So last thing before we jump into this recipe, I just wanted to talk about soy sauce briefly because this recipe has soy sauce in it. And I noticed when I went to the store that the two of the soy sauces that they had are really, in my opinion, they're not actually soy sauce at all. So this is a little note about real soy sauce. So soy sauce is an ancient condiment, which is made from fermented soybeans, simple grains, and salt. It's actually created by the same microbes that are used to create miso paste. When looking at ingredients in soy sauce, you should expect to see soybeans, water, salt, and possibly wheat or other grains. However, oftentimes I find that a quick look at the ingredients of a product reveals that the product is really not traditionally produced. So these are two photos that I took in my local store of sauces that, in my opinion, are not really soy sauce at all. So one of them contains corn syrup, the other contains high fructose corn syrup. One of them actually has more corn syrup than it does soy. They both contain caramel food coloring and a whole bunch of different preservatives. So these are not really soy sauces at all. These are more like modern soy sauce-like products. So my point here is whenever you can, try to choose the simplest, most simply made and traditional products. Doesn't mean that it has to be organic or expensive. This is an example of a Kikkoman soy sauce, which is a very large, well-known brand of soy sauce. They do make it in low sodium as well. So this is a low sodium version of it, but it is still naturally brewed. So this is real soy sauce. Basically, the ingredients are soy, water, salt, and possibly a little bit of some sort of grain, probably wheat. And those are fermented, and that creates the color and it creates the flavor, and it largely preserves itself. So you don't have to be adding these fake colorings and sugar. Adding sugar to soy sauce, what a thing. Okay. Anyway, that's my little ingredient spotlight for the night. So let's jump into actually cooking this recipe. This is a photo of the end, what we're gonna have at the end, more or less. And let's get into the actual cooking. Give me 1 second here. Sorry, guys, it's going to be a technical error here for 1 second as I bring this up. Okay, let's come back to this again.
Chrisso, I just wanted to say thanks for, making a plug for reading the nutrition labels, right? And always looking at those first 4 ingredients to know what's in the food that we're consuming. It says everything, right?
Yeah, I think it's a quick look makes a huge difference. So sorry, for some reason the Zoom controls have shifted slightly, as they do with every update, it seems. Can everybody see? I just put up a video. Can people see this?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, great. That's great. Okay, so let's get into actually cooking through this. So I'm going to lay out all the ingredients we're going to be using. I try to do things pretty slowly and kind of just in real time, so that if you are cooking along at home, you can keep pace with the recipe. So we have some sweet potatoes here. We have this spice blend. This is a poultry seasoning. We have the 4 relatively large chicken breasts in the back there. These are actually much more than 1.75 pounds of chicken, as it was stated in the recipe. This is just the chicken that I found at my local store that looked particularly good. We have some soy sauce here and some olive oil. So the first thing you can do is you can preheat your oven to 425. And let's start to prep these sweet potatoes. So I don't always peel all the vegetables that I cook or bake, especially potatoes. I often leave the skins on if I'm just coarsely chopping them and doing them in the oven. But I did want to peel these sweet potatoes. The skins are a little tougher than potatoes. If you don't want to actually peel the sweet potato, you can also just go around and kind of take off any areas of bruised skin or any little imperfections on the skin, or any little bruises you can take off, even if you don't want to peel the entire sweet potato. Or you can go for it, peel the whole sweet potato like I'm doing here. I love to keep both potatoes and sweet potatoes on hand pretty much all the time. They store extremely well. You can keep them in a dark pantry or cupboard kind of area that's room temperature or a little lower. You can also keep them in the fridge. I tend to keep mine in the fridge in one of the lowest drawers. And they're great. They last for weeks and weeks in the fridge. They're great to use in all sorts of dishes. You can use them in lots of different ways. And actually, this is one of the ways that I most frequently do chicken or vegetables. But actually, let me go back to the vegetables. This is one of the ways that I most frequently cook roasted vegetables, usually potatoes and sweet potatoes, is to basically a big Pyrex tray like this, peel them and cube them up, and load them up. So, Marsha, I'm curious, are there any questions at this point?
I don't see any questions as of yet. But when you talk about roasting vegetables, I learned the hard way through trial and error to make sure and put the vegetables that are more tender, to put them in later, because the sweet potato is pretty tough and takes longer to cook than, let's say, like green beans. So putting all your hearty vegetables in first, and things that need to cook a little bit softer in afterwards.
Totally, that's a great point. Yeah, and I do find too. Well, the nice thing with roasting vegetables is I find it's very rare that I'm like, oh, this is overcooked. Usually things just get crispy. And even if you cook them for a little longer than they should have cooked in the oven, usually you have like a little crispiness to the edges. But that's a great point. And actually, even though we're doing everything in the oven tonight, and we're going to do everything on this one pan, I'm actually still going to put the sweet potatoes in first before the chicken, because they will take longer than the chicken. So that's yeah, so that's a great point. Yeah, and I think about that when I'm doing stuff in the oven, but also when I'm sauteing things. It's like, okay, let's see, these, say, onions are gonna go on first, and then something very soft and tender can go on right at the end, because you don't want it to just get totally cooked to mush. So anyway, so for tonight's purpose, we're cooking we're chopping these sweet potatoes into roughly like 1/2-inch cubes. But again, there's all different ways that you could do this. You could do kind of fry shape. You could do kind of sticks like that. And they make other fun tools too. I have a little tool that kind of does a crinkle cut. It's very simple. It looks kind of like just a little piece of metal with a little crinkle running down it. And you can use that to make kind of ridged chips, or if you turn it 90 degrees between each cut, you can get kind of a waffle fry look. So there's some fun ideas if you want to liven this up or make it a little more exciting for kids or adults for that matter. It's always luxurious to have something more textured or interesting. But I love doing both potatoes and sweet potatoes like this too. I think of this as kind of like a hash brown cut, like these, little cubes, little cubed up. And actually these do make great hash browns. If you make a whole tray like this, you can heat some up in the morning on the skillet really quick, already cooked. So it's just about heating them up and fry an egg on top, and you have a great quick breakfast.
Excuse me, Chrisso, there is a question. Someone asked, is there a simple machine that does dicing of something as hard as sweet potatoes?
Possibly, yeah. I used to have a little device that was kind of like a grid of blades that you could put a potato down and kind of slam, and it would kind of come out the grid all cubed up. But it's true, sweet potatoes are pretty hard. I think so there might be some device that could work. I think I tend to find myself in general though, I do have some of those kitchen gadgets. I generally don't use them, and I think it's like, unless you're making a really big batch of something, I just find that it ends up taking just as long, because then you're cleaning this complex tool and drying it. And so I generally find myself using a sharp knife like this and a cutting board. But that being said, I'm sure that there probably is some kind of tool that you could use. That's a great question. So here I'm just putting the dry spice blend into some olive oil, and we added a little bit of the soy sauce. So this is about 2 ounces of olive oil, or 1/4 cup. This is just a teaspoon of soy sauce. You could also use salt. There's no reason why you couldn't use salt if you wanted to. For this recipe, we're using soy sauce. Gave me a great excuse to talk about soy sauce and how it's made and how to look for a good quality soy sauce. But there's no reason you couldn't use salt. And then you can see I used a pretty generous amount of the spice blend. That was like 2 full tablespoons. And we mix that all together. And we're going to coat all of the sweet potatoes in this. And I'm going to use only about half of this, because I'm going to save about half of it for the chicken, to coat the chicken. So like I was saying, this spice blend that I'm using, and this is just purely a choice, you know, it's totally up to you. This one that I'm using is thyme, sage, marjoram, rosemary, black pepper, and nutmeg. And I did like how this came out a lot. My only complaint, I think, about this spice blend, or well, they're calling it poultry seasoning, and they say that it's great for poultry, stuffing, and gravy. It is very classic kind of American, European spice blend. My only complaint with it is that it color-wise, it looks kind of gray. And so I think if I was to do this again, I might use a different spice blend that was a little bit brighter. Maybe had a little bit more green or red or orange to it. Just visually, it's my own takeaway. So I just gave those a generous little stirring and coating, trying to make sure that all of those potatoes are coated with some spices and some oil. Put a little bit more olive oil on the pan. I think of this as less a part of the recipe and more just to make sure that we're not going to have anything sticking here. And let's spread these veggies out. So like I said, you know, we're going to get into the chicken pretty shortly, and it's a great recipe as well. But I will say that even just this part that we've done so far, this is a dish, or similar to this is a technique that I use all the time. I would say almost every week, if not every week, I'll end up cooking at least one tray of roasted vegetables like this. And it could be potatoes, it could be sweet potatoes. You could use other types of vegetables too. Those are what I most commonly end up using. It could be russet, yellow, it could be gold, it could be red, any type of potato. But this is a really nice way to prepare a large amount of potatoes, and they store great. Can be kind of added to other meals throughout the week.
Chrisso, a participant shared that their spice blend claims to be Tuscan Italian, basil, oregano, red bell pepper, garlic, thyme, fennel, black pepper, anise seed, and they'll see how it tastes.
Nice.
That's what's awesome about this recipe, is that you can really mix things up.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, this is chicken is eaten all over the world at this point. It's part of all sorts of different cuisines, and both potatoes and sweet potatoes are eaten in many parts of the world as well. So it's a great flexible recipe where really all you have to do is change what spice you're using, and you can pull it off as an Italian dish, you could pull it off as an Asian dish, you could pull it off as a more classically American dish. You could do curry, you could do kind of an Indian style. And like I was saying before, you know, all it takes at that point is like which salad you're pairing it with, or maybe which kind of vegetable you might want to just saute quickly on the side, and then you have kind of a whole meal that all fits together.
Chrisso, is it okay to add paprika? Someone is asking.
Yeah, paprika is great. I love the flavor of paprika. It's one of the kind of smokier, more flavorful, not very spicy peppers. I believe it's Hungarian traditionally is where it comes from, but it works great in all types of food, I would say. So basically what we've done at this point, just to talk through some of this, basically I just have the 4 chicken breasts in this same big metal bowl again, and we've drizzled the rest of the spice and oil mix over them. And now I'm just zesting this lemon. This is a little grater, which is actually one of the tools that I use the most. It's this little grater. It's great for things like ginger and lemon zest and don't usually use it for cheese. It's very, very fine. Although maybe for a hard cheese like a Parmesan, it would work. But basically, we're about to bake this lemon kind of over the chicken and over the veggies. So the skin will basically be lost. So I figured might as well get some zest off of it first and throw that in with the spice blend on the chicken. And then we're going to cut up this lemon into some little chunks that are going to get baked. And then I'm also going to sneak a chunk of it to just use as juice on the chicken rather than baking all of the chunks. I actually did this recipe, or a very similar recipe again, just in the last week. And I was struck by just reminded of how nicely citrus flavors chicken. And I think one reason why like orange chicken, lemon chicken is a thing, both in like Chinese dishes, but even in European dishes, there's a lot of lemon and chicken and capers and those kind of combinations, or even lemon and dill. And I think it's because that the mild flavor of white meat chicken, like chicken breast, really soaks in that citrus flavor really nice, and the citrus flavor really penetrates into the meat, and it really comes through in the meat in a nice way. So this is basically what I did with the potatoes. You can see I'm kind of using the chicken to sop up the oil that's on the bottom of this big pan, trying to get as much of the oil and spice onto the chicken, trying to fully coat each chicken breast with as much of the spice and oil as I can.
So, Chrisso, we have an important question.
Yeah.
If someone did not get a lemon, can they use a little vinegar?
Yeah, that would be a great option, just to have a little bit of that sourness. And it's also totally possible to just do this recipe without a lemon or without any citrus. And maybe the spice blend that you've chosen doesn't make sense with a lemon. Maybe you're doing, I don't know, curry or something, and it doesn't make sense to put lemon juice on there. But yeah, so the lemon is very much an option. Nothing will be lost or harmed if you decide to do it without a lemon. And if you do want to get a little bit of that sourness in there, you could use a lime. You could use an orange. You could use a little bit of vinegar. Yeah, totally flexible to take that or leave that. Cool. So I'm just doing a little cleaning up here, and actually maybe I'll take a moment to just say, when I'm cooking meat, really of any kind, I tend to be extremely cautious when I'm handling raw meat. So basically, you could see me, I was really getting my hands in there to get the spice blend all over the chicken. But at every step in the process, after I'm touching that raw chicken, I'm really pausing and I'm washing my hands with hot soapy water in the sink, and I'm making a point to not touch other objects in my kitchen with those meat hands, with those raw meat fingers, So after opening the package and putting the chicken in and putting the package in the garbage, I wash my hands. And after handling the raw chicken cutlets, or raw chicken breasts, I'm washing my hands. So if anything, I tend to be probably overcautious about not kind of leaving little fingerprints of potentially raw meat around the kitchen. But I think it's a great practice to get into, to just, be very cautious, take it very seriously. The advice on cooking chickens these days is that they say actually don't rinse the meat off and towel it off, because then you're just getting more raw chicken juices all over your sink. But I think, that's a matter of opinion. If you want to rinse it off in the sink, I think that's still an option. Just make sure that you're not dripping kind of little driplets of blood or raw chicken water anywhere around the kitchen if you do clean up well.
That is an excellent point, Chrisso. To reduce like cross-contamination, it is not recommended that we wash poultry.
Mhm.
There are two interesting questions that came up. Someone asked if you would, is it okay to marinate this overnight? And then the second question is, would it cook quicker if you cover it? And I think they're referring uh, to the sweet potatoes. So those
Uh-huh.
are the two questions.
Uh-huh. Those are great questions. Yeah. So, and actually, I'm actually just gonna pause the video for a second because I'm about to put this back in the oven. So the answer I would say is, well, let's split it up. So the first question was about covering
Overnight.
Oh yeah. So marinating, yeah, marinating the chicken is is definitely a great option if you have the time. There's really no reason not to, and you can use a dish like this in the fridge, or often I'll use just like a nice Ziploc bag, and if you put a few chicken breasts in that Ziploc bag and you just pour that sauce, it's like it gets everywhere and it kind of coats all the surfaces. So it doesn't, my point being, you don't have to fully submerge these things in a ton of liquid to really get a lot of flavor. That being said, like totally, like the longer that you leave these chicken breasts in any sort of mixture like that, the deeper that flavor is going to penetrate into the meat, especially with like a relatively thicker chicken breast like these are. And then to answer the question about the sweet potatoes, or about really cooking in general, I would say yes, if you were to cover this pan with tin foil, the sweet potatoes would cook faster, but they also will cook wetter. They'll be more moist baked, and like kind of soft and wet than if you leave them dry like this. You're gonna get something that's more crispy or browned eventually. So yes, you can save some cooking time, but it's also just a decision. If you want really crispy potatoes or sweet potatoes, it's best to leave them uncovered and bake them at a pretty high heat, like a 425 or a 450. And likewise with the chicken, like this. So, and actually on that note, this is even kind of interesting. I noticed I really was making it a point to try to do this in one pan, and you'll see that it is getting pretty full. So some of the chicken is on top of the sweet potatoes. And even this is going to change how those sweet potatoes cook. Those sweet potatoes that were under the chicken ended up much more moist and soft, and the chicken as well that was on top of the sweet potatoes also ended up moister and more soft. So actually, well, you'll see, but basically I do end up moving things around a little bit. So everything is going in the oven. The sweet potatoes have already been in the oven for maybe 10 minutes while we were doing the chicken. And I'm gonna start by baking for 20 minutes. So this, unfortunately, guys, I'm sorry, this is the moment where if you are cooking along at home, actually you can just relax because you're gonna have to wait a little bit longer to do these next few steps. But I want to show you the process of cooking this chicken. And I want to kind of avoid just saying 20 minutes at 425 because every oven is different and also every chicken breast is different. Like I was saying earlier, some chicken breasts are very thin. These ones that I'm cooking are actually quite thick. So I started by baking these for 20 minutes at 425, and then right now, this is me taking them out to see how they're doing. You can see a lot of nice steam is coming off. You can see the edges of those lemons are getting a little browned. And so I'm kind of gonna check things a few different ways. I like to check the vegetables with a fork, see how they're doing. You can see they are relatively soft. I still don't think they're done. By my standard, I would rather have them cooked more. I'm flipping the chicken, partly to check on it and partly to potentially put it back in the oven flipped to cook it a little bit with the other side up. And then, like I was saying, I was kind of noticing that these sweet potatoes that were under the chicken were ending up both more moist, but also they were cooking much slower. They weren't nearly as cooked as the potatoes that were just in a thin layer. Those potatoes are getting a lot more heat.
So Chrisso, someone commented, for truly roasted vegetables and chicken, food should be in a single layer with space in between them and no cover. So they're just confirming to get that real crispiness of both the veggie and the protein, that they have their own space to get roasted and crispy.
Yeah, that's a great question. So you don't have to go for crispy, but if you are going for crispy, then I would say yes. Higher heat, uncovered, thinner layer, and checking it every once in a while because you don't want it to burn.
So speaking of like not letting it burn, can you repeat the temperature for the oven again? Thanks.
Yeah, of course. Yep. So right now this is at 425. And I usually find for roasting vegetables and getting vegetables crispy, 425, 450 is going to give you a much crispier vegetable than like 350 for longer. Like that, there's something about that high heat for a shorter time that's going to be more likely to give you crispy. But again, like we were saying, it's also important that it's uncovered, because if you're locking the moisture in there with a cover, then it's never going to be crispy. It's always going to be moist. So, if we were to tinfoil this over, none of the moisture is going to be able to actually evaporate. It's going to all be trapped in there, which could be quite delicious too, if that's what you're going for. On that note too, I'll say that chicken does give off a lot of drippings when you're cooking it. Some cuts of chicken more than others. So there will be some moisture that will come just out of the chicken. It'll be a mixture of water and fat, and it's very flavorful. So that water will kind of come out and start to pool in the pan a little bit. And it's one reason why I do like to use these like high rimmed Pyrexes like this, because it holds in any liquid that might drip. So right now I'm using a meat thermometer. If you cook chicken all the time, this might be something that feels unnecessary to you. But I wanted to show the process. So basically, when you're cooking chicken, if you're using a meat thermometer to see if it's done, you want to see that the deepest part of that chicken that you can stick that little thermometer head into has reached 165 degrees. So this has been cooking for, like I said, this was in there for about 20 minutes. And right now, the temperature that it's gotten to is 145. So this is going to go back in the oven. You can see it's not bloody, but it's not cooked. It needs to cook a little longer. And again, if some of you are cooking thinner chicken breasts, it could well be that they are done in 20 minutes. But I wanted to show this. I wanted to show how I go through this process of really checking. So generally, it's a combination of, I'll use a meat thermometer, and I'll also usually slice slice one of the breasts and see how it's actually looking in the middle. Okay, so anyway, this is going back in. So again, the oven's still at 425, and I'm gonna give it another 10 minutes, and we're gonna see how it's looking now. So now it's had a total of 30 minutes at 425. Okay, cool. And you can see, so some of the pan drippings you can see are kind of gathering there. Those will be really nice and flavorful. If you do want things to be really crispy and dry, one thing that you can do actually is pour off the pan drippings. Even like at this moment, I could say pour those pan drippings into a little bowl and put the pan back into the oven totally dry if I wanted to. It's not harming anything, but you know, that moisture that's there, that's going to be cooking underneath everything and slowly evaporating as well, is going to make everything a little bit more moist. So I'm basically doing my same little check again. I'm kind of flipping stuff around and I'm checking it. I'm cutting things. I'm poking things. I'm just trying to see if I think this is actually all the way done. And I am going to use the meat thermometer again. My suggestion here is that I don't think that for something like chicken breasts or chicken thighs, I don't think you're going to find that you always need to use a meat thermometer. But if you're new or relatively new to cooking chicken, or any meat for that matter, I think it's great to try it out a few times, because truly every oven is different. Just because your oven is telling you 425 does not mean that your oven is necessarily at 425. And also every cut of meat is different thickness, has a different amount of moisture in it. So my suggestion is, at least the first few times that you try something like this, check it out with a meat thermometer. And also it'll just give you a sense of like, oh, okay, that's what it looks like when it's like that. So that check that I just did there, that is at 160. So still it's been in there for 30 minutes at 425, and it still hasn't actually reached 165. And that being said, it probably has been at 160 for like 10 minutes, which is USDA safe. I believe you need at least 8 minutes at 160. But again, I'm not really exactly sure. There's no danger of overcooking. These aren't going to be suddenly overdone. So I decided to put these back in for another 10 minutes. This is the last time, I promise. Okay, so now the chicken breasts have been in the oven for about 40 minutes. And the sweet potatoes have been in the oven for about 50 minutes. And I did decide that this was done. Not only did these reach 165, but I think they probably were at 160 for at least 10 or maybe even 20 minutes. So they're definitely safe to eat. And they look delicious. My only, you know, as a slight perfectionist, I am like, well, it's a shame that I had to slice two of those chicken breasts and have to check on them, but it is what it is. It's a learning experience. They'll still be delicious. And you'll get to a point where you don't have to slice things in half to check on them, and you can still feel very confident.
I think that chicken in half, Chrisso, is just good balance, like portioning, right? Because they're pretty thick breasts, and it's about the size of the palm of your hand. So
yeah, that's a good point too. Is these chicken breasts are quite large. You know, I know in the recipe it said 4 chicken breasts, roughly 1.75 pounds. These 4 chicken breasts were closer to 4 pounds. So these chicken breasts are almost twice as large as what was actually called for in the recipe. This was what I found at my local store. It was what was on sale. It was what looked pretty fresh and good. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna go for these. So, but again, it gave me a good excuse to talk about how especially when cooking meat, I think it's much more important to really test and prod, and rather than just being like half an hour, 450, you know, it's like, yeah, maybe, but it's also good to know what you're looking for. So you can see that should look, there's really no pink. Everything is looking pretty kind of flaky, even to the center. And there's the finished dish. These roasted lemons might look a little strange, but I have to say they are delicious. When you kind of squirt that hot baked lemon juice out on the rest of the plate, it's a really nice treat. And then I just wanted to show, so what the other thing that I really like about these Pyrex pans, and if you're looking carefully, you'll notice this is actually a different Pyrex pan now on the left, is that they're also great for storage. So this stuff basically just came out of the oven. I didn't want to put a hot Pyrex pan in the oven because it's still so hot and it'll heat up the rest of the oven. I mean, it's fine, honestly, at the end of the day. So I transferred the sweet potatoes to one pan and the chicken to a different pan, and I'm putting these in the fridge. And I mean, you can see this is a lot of food for $15. If I go back just a little bit here to this is a lot of food for $15. This could be 4 or probably more lunches. This could be dinner for 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 or 7, depending on what else you're throwing in there. So this is a great dish for a dinner for the family or for having people over. And it's also a lovely dish to prep in advance and have some chicken breasts. You can make a sandwich, you can make a salad. And actually, I just wanted to show, let's see. So here's actually a salad example. This is a relatively large salad. I like my salads large, apparently. And this is just romaine lettuce. We have a few cherry tomatoes, a little bit of cucumber. And this is this is actually just a half of one of those big chicken breasts, sliced thinly on top of the salad, and olive oil and balsamic vinegar. And then I crumbled up a little bit of those, you know, those little sesame sticks are kind of like a salty snack. I crumbled up some of those as kind of a crouton alternative. So this is just another thing that you could do with these in the fridge. It's a great simple meal. You don't even have to heat up that chicken breast again. You just slice it up on a cutting board and throw it on top of the salad. And then let's see, here's one last photo to get you inspired to try this out if you haven't tonight. And these are chicken thighs. So I wanted to just try basically very, very similar recipe with chicken thighs, and these came out great too. So these are bone-in thighs. You can see there's a little bone there. They are a little bit more dark meat than the breast, I would say, but still mostly white meat. And these I did on a bed of sliced up onions. And these gave off a lot of drippings as they cooked. So I actually multiple times took the pan out and poured off the drippings from the chicken into a soup that I was making.
Excuse me, Chrisso. It looks like the skin is still on.
Yes.
So was that okay? So that.
Yeah, that's an option. You can get thighs with no skin. You can get but these the chicken in this particular photo is bone-in, skin on, and it was, again, this is just what I happened to buy, what looked good at the store that day. So just to say that this recipe can be done with chicken breast. It can also be done with chicken thighs with very little alteration. Again, you know, I'm checking these at the end with the thermometer, and yeah. So Okay, thank you guys so much. We're almost at the end here. Please don't dash quite yet, because if you're willing to just take a second in the chat box to give us a quick evaluation of the class, that would be just lovely. And let's see. So the questions we have, what did you enjoy about this class? Would you recommend this class or a class in this series to a friend? And is there anything that you would change about the class? So if people want to put that in the chat box, it would be much appreciated for our reporting and moving forward. And while I have you here, I also want to put in a quick plug for the FNEP program. This is the Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program. And this is an amazing program that connects people with a series of 8 hourly classes about nutrition, cooking, tips and tricks and techniques that can help you save money and save time and cook healthy meals for your family. And this is a program that Marcia, my co-host tonight, she is one of our FNEP teachers. And so anyone who is eligible for WIC, SNAP, Head Start, etc., is also eligible for this FNEP program. And it's just like this, it's all virtual. You can do it from home and learn some great tips and techniques and tricks moving into the new year that are going to help you have a healthy diet and maybe save some money, save some time, eat some good food. People who go through this program will get a certificate of completion. They get a little FNEP cookbook and also some tools, and of course, 8 hours of nutritional education for free. And yeah, and then finally, I just wanted to, and Marcia, you should put in the chat box your email and phone number for people if they want to reach out to you about those FNEP classes. And then finally, I just wanted to give one more little plug for next class in this series. So about a month from today, we're going to be doing the enchiladas. And yeah, if you are enjoying the series, I urge you to come again and check out another class and learn how to make another nice, cost-effective, healthy meal. And so this one will also be a 1-pan baked meal. We're doing it vegetarian, but there's no reason why you couldn't add meat if you wanted to. And yeah, so I hope to see some of you next month. And then I guess that's pretty much the end. We have a few minutes here. If anyone does have any questions, I would love to answer questions. And if not, thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next time.
Chrisso, 2 things. First, I just want to thank everyone for their feedback and their warm comments of appreciation about the value of this cooking class. We do love the feedback, and yes, we hope to one day meet in person where we can actually eat and enjoy this food and break bread together. And someone made a really interesting point that if you could just touch on again before we break, which is that you should not wash meat. I think that the concern was, like to use, that you can use a vinegar or a lemon or a lime or some type of zest, but that it's not necessary to wash meat before cooking.
Was that
Or would you rinse it?
Well, again, like you were saying, I think that the technical suggestion from USDA, FDA is that, at least for chicken, I know, is that you're not supposed to rinse it anymore because it is just getting raw chicken juice more around your kitchen. So I mean, from a technical point of view, I'd say that's probably my answer. But I would say, you know, in general, for me, it's if I open something and there's some blood or some liquid in there, I might pat it off, or I might give it a quick rinse and then dry it in the sink very carefully and clean up very carefully. You know, I think the important thing though is that you're not getting raw meat juices either around your kitchen or on your fingers and then on different objects in your kitchen. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Chrisso.
Yeah.
Okay. And finally, if whether or not you have a YouTube channel.
Oh yeah. So yes, we have been recording these, and they do get posted on our Cornell YouTube. Let's see. I didn't give you a link for that, Marcia, to put in the chat box, but if folks go to the page where you register for things, you can actually see some of our past recordings of some of our past classes from that page. It'll take you to a YouTube playlist. So yeah, so we do usually record these, and yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great night, and I hope if you were cooking along, I hope you enjoy your dinner, and if you weren't, I hope you enjoy it some other time, and have a great night.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for joining us. See you next month.
Thank you.